Hey everyone, this is Sina with another episode of Into the Bytecode. My guest today is Jesse Pollak. Jesse's been working on moving crypto forward for many years. He's been at Coinbase for the past 6 years or so, first leading engineering across various consumer and retail products, and more recently leading the development of Base, Coinbase's layer 2 network built on the OP stack. I really appreciated this conversation because Jesse shared more of his personal journey in starting to work on Base. He talked about how he almost left Coinbase because he wanted to work on something more on-chain and crypto native. But then he had this intuition that something really powerful and impactful could be done there. And how he had this year-long journey of thinking through and working on different ideas until he finally landed on Base with a couple other collaborators internally. I find Jesse's perspective on crypto and the positive impact it can have on the world to be incredibly refreshing and inspiring. Especially towards the end of this conversation, he shared some of his personal values and why he's working on this technology in the first place. We also talked about various other topics, like how he's been taking his salary in crypto and using crypto as his personal financial stack, and how he's actually using crypto more and more on a daily basis as time goes on. All said, this conversation helps me understand the deeper motivations behind Base and gives me a sense of confidence knowing the person who's leading the project and what their motivations are. And with that, I'll leave you to it, and I hope you enjoy. Into the Bytecode is sponsored by Optimism. The Optimism Collective is building the open source modular software project known as the OP Stack, which allows developers to run layer 2 blockchains, while also addressing key governance and economic challenges in the wider ecosystem. Optimism is also leading decentralized grants experiments, like retroactive public goods funding, which recently granted 10 million OP to projects across developer tooling, infrastructure, and education. More recently, they had a major milestone by adding Coinbase's blockchain Base to also be governed by Optimism governance, and also contribute a portion of their sequencer revenues back to the collective. I've known the Optimism team for many years and know that they're dedicated to both scaling Ethereum and extending its ability to build better economic structures. So, if you're interested in learning more, whether you want to build something new or you want to apply for grant funding, then I encourage you to check out Optimism at optimism.io. Maybe we can start at a simple place and then see where things go from there. But awesome. Starting with Base, I'm curious because I know you had you played an instrumental role in getting that off the ground. But what is the motivation behind Base? Why work on a project like this?
Yeah. And I think like the motivation behind Base for me had been building for a long time at Coinbase. I've now been at Coinbase for a little bit more than 6 years. And so I joined at the beginning of 2017 and spent kind of the first 4.5 years building all of our consumer facing products. So Coinbase Pro, Coinbase Wallet, and loved doing that. It was awesome, learned so much. But I think like a lot of that time, I felt like I was still really far away from the actual like innovation happening in the space. It was kind of like I was off here kind of building these interfaces for like the mainstream audience to engage with crypto, but then all the innovation was over there. And that was both the feeling for me personally, but I also think it was like kind of a reality. It's been a reality for Coinbase where, if you think about like most of the innovation that's happened in crypto over the last decade, or not decade, last 5 years, I'd say, on chain, like Coinbase has played a smaller role on that. I think we've had some big, contributions with things like USDC, but, like uniswap, compound, like all of this novel mechanism design that's basically happened over the last 5 years. We've been a little bit further afield from it. And so I think after 4.5 years of just kind of like experiencing that and having fun doing the other stuff, my feeling was like, okay, like I got to get involved. Like I got to figure out how am I going to like be at the cutting edge and like kind of push the limits of what's possible here. And so shifted.
Do you remember that moment? Like, was there something in particular that caught your attention or made you want to make that change at that time?
Yeah, I think so. Kind of like fall. So it must have been fall 2020. I basically got line of sight to two big pieces of work finishing in my like previous role. So one was got line of sight to us IPOing, which happened in April of 2021, and then the other was kind of starting in 2019. I led this effort to rewrite all of Coinbase's mobile products. So we rewrote the mobile apps from kind of native iOS and Android to a combined React Native code base that allowed them to like, be one app really. And fall 2020, we also got line of sight to that project basically like shipping finally. So I think having those two things line up, and they basically lined up, they basically happened at the same time, kind of late Q1, early Q2, 2021. I just kind of felt like, oh, this is the moment. Like, if I'm going to make a change, it's like, these are these two things that I've just put years into. Like, I'm going to ship them and then I'm going to figure something else out. And at first, like, my first inclination was actually like to leave Coinbase. It's like, I will have done 4.5 years. I want to go start another company.
That's a good amount of time.
Yeah, that's a good amount of time. And so,
especially in crypto years, it probably feels like decades.
Yeah, feels like a long time, both fast and short. It's crazy to think that 2017 was 6 years ago, or more than 6 years ago when I joined. But yeah, so I kind of set my eyes on like, I'm going to finish these two projects. I'm going to do a really like best in class transition and kind of succession planning. And then I'm going to leave and start something. And I kind of, I started telling I told Max Brandsburg, who now still runs all of our consumer facing products on the product side and is, a really close friend. And I told him that fall. And then I told my boss, Manish, who's the head of engineering, kind of February, maybe January. And I mean, so much credit to Manish. Manish was like, I hear you. Like, I understand that you're feeling this way. And I want to support you in whatever you do, but like, don't just leave. Like, take a little break, take some time. We can figure out how to support you to do that and reflect and then see how you feel. And so he basically like, worked with HR to make it so I could take some leave. And I took about like 3-4 months of leave where I did some traveling. And
you managed to actually fully zoom out and disconnect.
Yeah, I don't know about fully zooming out. I was like pretty quickly like start jumping into working on other things. But I did some. It was like me and my now wife got to go to Europe and do a little traveling. It was good. But after 4 months, I'd kind of pursued some other things, and I started kind of poking my nose back in at Coinbase, being like, what's going on over here? Like, what are people thinking about? And I mean, Coinbase is just a really special place. And I think I saw like a few things that were happening that were really interesting to me. And I also just think like Manish said, after having 4 months of perspective, I think one thing that really kind of felt obvious to me was, wow, if I have something really special at Coinbase. It's like, I've been here for 5 years.
Totally.
So I know everyone, and people like trust me for the most part because I have had a good track record. But I'm also like at the very cutting edge because that's where I've been like focusing for the last, like my free time, like I just do things in crypto. And that's pretty unique in a big company like Coinbase. And so I kind of had this like re-engagement personally with Coinbase where it's like, if I can figure out the way to combine those two things, where it's like, combine all of this trust and knowledge and historical context with like this kind of like future cutting edge thinking that I'm doing, like there's something here, like there's something that would be really fun and valuable, important for me, and then could have a really big impact on the company. And so I yeah, go for it. Sorry.
And like Coinbase is doing something as Coinbase, like Coinbase's position within like the world and the crypto landscape is also non-fungible, right? You can't really, you can't recreate it on your own. Like it would be totally different if you went into the startup. And something like Base is almost like a perfect marriage of these two things. It's something that only Coinbase could have done.
Yes. Well, this was like, so I kind of had that idea of like, how can I combine these things? And that kind of began the journey of Base. And like at the beginning, I was just like, I have this intuition that there's something here. And I remember having a conversation with Max, because, again, one of my close friends, I was like, there's something here. Like, I don't know what it is, but like, there's something here. And I want to like commit to trying to find that thing.
Around like, layer 2 infrastructure in particular, or like just doing something on chain and like futuristic.
Just doing something on chain that leveraged my context to change the company and bring us into the next like
totally
on-chain era, right? Like figure out how do I combine that kind of like cutting edgeness with this like huge asset and network that Coinbase has. And if I could figure out how to do that, there would be something really powerful there. And the first version of it, like, September 2020, 2021, I brought the first like take on this idea to our exec team. And it was like, totally grandiose. And like, we should bring the whole company on chain and like a bunch of resources, a bunch of money to do all this. And everyone was kind of just like, what are you talking about?
You're crazy. Yeah.
Like, what do you mean? And now like I look back at that proposal the other day, I was like, yeah, it was crazy. Like I literally sounded, I think, a little like raving mad. But there was kind of this intuition that there's something here. And then the next year, because it really was, we started working Base in a concerted way in August, September of 2022. So it was really a year after that of like trying to figure out what it was. And we went through like 3 different ideas, and
how do you go about like how do you go about like thinking through something like that just strategically? Because it's such a big bet, and even even just announcing something like that has an impact in how people perceive Coinbase, and could have all these like second order effects, and how does it play out? And we're like living in a landscape that's also evolving in real time and responding to what we're doing. Like, how did you go about thinking through that?
Well, it definitely wasn't just me. It was like luckily I had great collaborators and managers and mentors at the company. And I think like it wasn't just me who saw like there's something here. Like if we can figure out how to put Jesse on the right thing and like get his energy directed in the right way, like there's something here. And so it ended up, I don't even really know how to describe it. It kind of was the journey of a startup inside the business, though.
Totally.
Like, we got a little group of people together. We started working on ideas, basically, just being like, what should we build? And we latched onto one pretty quickly and spent the first kind of 6 months building that one, and got to 6 months and we're like, this isn't a good idea. Like it's not going to work. Like there's a bunch of risk and complexity.
So what? So you were taking. Well, how would it compare with like a startup approach? Because I'm like, you didn't launch those things, right?
We didn't launch those things.
Yeah. So, but you were still building. You were still prototyping things and like dog fooding them inside or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It was kind of like prototyping, and then it's prototyping, and then it was a lot of like reviewing with our chief product officer and like looking at them and getting his input and thoughts. And like one reflection I have from that period is it's like really hard to innovate on a schedule or like invent on a schedule. Like totally. For six months, it's like I was doing weekly meetings with our chief product officer where we were showing the progress that we were making on like figuring this out. And those were probably like the most anxiety inducing, stressful 6 months of my life. Just,
wow. Yeah.
just like that. I felt, and I think like credit to all these people, none of them were putting this on me, but like my experience, my lived experience was like, I need to figure out this answer like ASAP, because otherwise like I'm not adding any value to the company. And
Totally.
so that meant every week it felt like, oh, I have to like show up to like almost convince people that I figured it out. And that led to all sorts of like in pain for me, where I was just like a lot of feeling of like I figured it out, and then people, we would have conversations and people would be like poke holes in it, and then I'd feel like down and be
Completely
like, oh, I haven't
deflated.
figured it out. Like, man, I don't know what I'm doing. I can't do this.
Man, that feeling is like the most difficult part of starting something new.
Yeah,
The uncertainty and the emotional like up and down you feel as you think you have something, and then the existential crisis of like, oh my God, the whole thing is like broken. It's not gonna work. I need to, and then you go into this like depth of despair for 3, 4 days, however long it takes, maybe longer. It's crazy.
it's crazy. It's really, and I'd started a startup before Coinbase,
Yeah,
but it had been 5 years since I'd been in that. And also, I don't know, there's something about doing this inside of a big company. Like even when we were in a startup, it's like we felt that. I felt that a lot, but also like we sent like a monthly update to our investors that was an email,
totally.
right? But like a lot of my lived experience in 2022 was like I every week I have to like sit down with our chief product officer of what is a big public company, and be
Totally.
like, here's my current thinking on the answer. And that, it was hard. It was super, super hard. Really rewarding, and learned so much, and incredible people that I got to work with, and all that. But definitely,
That's got to be such a like good mechanism on the part of like Coinbase and like the leadership team to have someone who's like really creative and like self-motivated and like is just going down all these weird rabbit holes. Like even regardless of if you found something, just that feedback loop of you, like the stress you internally feel and come back and report on like the next dead end that you found is probably so informative and understanding what's actually going to happen in crypto more broadly, for instance.
yeah, I hope so. I hope. Oh, yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
It was definitely informative for me. I learned so much. Failed a lot. Felt like a failure a lot.
Yeah.
Had like a few moments where I was just like, I can't do this anymore. I don't have
Yeah.
it in me. But
And then you
I
had a
mean, like,
moment where it like clicked. or it's
kind
a or
of.
it's a or it's a process of like, taking the next step is clear and you're trying not to create any fully irreversible decisions, and there's some level of trust that there's an interesting next step will open in time.
Yeah. Well, I think definitely, like, I feel so grateful for the amount of trust that like Brian and Surojit and all these people, like they just let me kind of flail for a year, like not like trying and failing kind of repeatedly to figure out the right answer. But they just kept supporting me. I think like the way we ended up creating Base was we basically iterated through these three ideas, and literally on every single one of them, we got to the point of like starting to build it and thinking about how would we build this and where would we build it. And we started running the same questions. It was like, oh, like we want to write this thing in EVM, but like we can't really deploy it on Ethereum because it's going to be too expensive for all of our users. Like, what L2 should we put it on? Oh, like none of these L2s are quite there, and like none of them quite work across all of Coinbase's products. Like, we need to figure out how to align that and make all that stuff work. And we hit that literally 3 times. And on
Yeah.
the third time, um, we got to the point where we hit that, and we were thinking about like what's the next step. And Coinbase in 2022, and now I think like with bear market, it's like all about how do we be as efficient as possible with our resources. And at that point, I had like I think there was like it was probably me and kind of 8 engineers who were working on this stuff, and I had a bunch of conversations with Max again, who was my kind of I reported to Will, who's now running our developer product group. And he was paired with Max, who was, now runs our consumer product group, and they together were running at the time the ecosystem group. And the 3 of us kind of had conversations, and we were like, this is just too many people to be working on this in this environment. And so they actually, I guess we kind of made the call to like shut it down a little bit. Like we said, hey, let's send most of these engineers and product manager and move them to another project in the company, and let's stop this project. And like Jesse plus it was me plus 3 other engineers. Like you guys just go over there and like figure out what you learned and like what your takeaways are, and like how you can take those learnings to accelerate some stuff inside the company. Like, just like this current.
So you're kind of like calling it like it's time to distill the learnings and absorb it somewhere else.
Yeah. That was it. It was like, go figure out how to take these things elsewhere and accelerate other efforts in the company, and take a little time to do that. But like, that's the thing, like this is over. And I remembered that. And I was very like, it was, I both felt a tremendous amount of sadness, because I was like, wow, I really like, now I actually failed. Like it was a year of working on this, but like, I don't have anything to show for it. And then also just a ton of relief, because I was like, oh man, I'm so glad I don't have to do these weekly meetings anymore, where I have to like try and convince people that I know what we're doing. And not just the weekly meetings with kind of like the leadership of the company, but also the weekly meetings with the team, of like 12 people, where it's like, I have to try and convince these people that I know what we're doing, and like give them meaningful and interesting things to work on. And so I felt a ton of relief about letting that go. And then me and these 3 engineers, one of whom is this guy, Michael, who he joined a month before me in 2017. We like scaled Coinbase from 2017 to 2021. We just kind of like took a month, and we were like, let's just go like see what we can build on chain with these learnings, like see how we can accelerate some of these things, and like just treat it kind of like a hackathon. And me and Michael looked at each other, and really Michael, I'll give him the credit. He was like, I think we should try and build an L2 and just see like what it would look like, because we keep getting stuck on this, and like, man, it doesn't feel good to keep getting stuck.
That's such a crazy idea. I can imagine like the level of like hype I would feel just thinking that thought,
He said it to me, and he'd suggested it before, and I had been like, I don't know, man, it seems like it's off, it's a whole distraction, like it's going to take a lot of resources, all these things. But this time we were kind of free to have a little bit of time for exploration. And I said, great, like, let's go try it. Let's see what happens. And then I went to, we did a like first exploration a little bit on it. And we started convincing ourselves that there was something here, and being like, whoa, like there's actually an opportunity here. Like we could do this. And I had dinner. It was at some like company dinner with like the engineering and product leads or something. I don't remember. But Surojit, who was the chief product officer at the time, I got to sit next to him for a little bit and started talking about this idea of like, maybe we should build an L2. And we talked about related things previously. And he started, from a place of like, no, like, come on, we just need to like stop, Jesse. Like you've been doing this for like,
it's
like,
over.
Give it up. Like it's over, right? And then we talked about it for 30 minutes. And I think like through those 30 minutes, he started to see a little bit more what we were seeing, which is like, oh, there's an opportunity here. And I remember him at the end of that dinner, he grabbed me and he was like, Jesse, I think there's something here. You just need to launch it. Like, don't listen to anyone. Just like figure out how to get this thing out into the wild, because like there's gonna be a million things that prevent you from doing this. And if you can just get it live, it's gonna be something. And I think it's gonna be important. And that was a Wednesday. And I was like, okay, well, that's I don't know what that means, but like, that's like, okay.
But I like the sound of it.
I like the sound of it. And so I went back to Michael that night. It was like a Wednesday night. And I said, okay, I had this conversation with Surojit, and he was like, we should just launch this. And like, we can't launch this because that's just impossible. But like, can we launch something? And me and him put our heads together and said, we could launch an internal version of this that's like positioned as like the internal L2 testnet that anyone can use to build on-chain applications. And we called it BaseNet. And that Monday, so like that's 5 days later, we published in like the all product engineering channel. We were like, we're excited to launch BaseNet. Get started here. Here's the RPC endpoint. Here's the documentation. This is going to be like the place where you can build your applications on chain that's internal to Coinbase. It'll give you privacy, like all these things. And we got like an incredible response. People were like, whoa, this is cool. And then it kind of just built from there.
Because before that, you were launching things on some other internal testnet, I imagine, or...
Before that, we had in the earlier in the summer when we were building some of these other things, we'd stood up CoinNet, which is like it's like an L1 Ethereum proof, POA chain. So
got
it's
it.
like
totally
kind of
proof of authority chain with signatures.
Yeah, it's like running Geth. And so we'd stood up CoinNet in like earlier in the year to prototype on because we didn't want to be leaking it all to public testnets. And so it was CoinNet was the L1 and then BaseNet was the L2. And yeah, that was the beginning. And I think once we launched it and we got the like response from people, then it was just like, oh, there's something here. Like there's really something here. Like people are excited, they're engaged, they think they're just excited to see us doing this kind of work. And we had another few weeks to think about it. And I think at that point, both of us were like, okay, now we got to go convince everyone to give us the fourth shot. Like,
yeah. So when was this?
This was like late summer, early fall, 2022. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It was cool. And then, we just, Michael started building and I started convincing people.
Yeah.
So, and people, yeah, I mean, credit to Will Robinson, who runs our developer product group. He encouraged us. He was like, go spend some more time thinking about this and writing it and making a case. And if there's a case here that is a good one, we'll do it. I'll support you, but we're gonna keep it really small, scrappy.
So what is the case? Like what did you see? What convinces you of this?
I think basically where we started was that over the last year, we had been trying to build on-chain products and just getting stuck on this problem of like, how do we easily build an on-chain product that works at a scale of Coinbase, i.e. hundreds of millions of users, from a cost perspective, that works really well with Coinbase products from a usability perspective, and like is secure. And we'd run into that 3 times. And it wasn't just us running into that. We'd also seen a bunch of other teams at the company because, we were kind of like the shelling point.
You're like the leading indicator.
Right, we were leading it, but we were seeing other people running into the same problem. And I think our feeling was like, there's like 1,200 engineers at Coinbase.
Right.
And if all of them are having some of these inklings of ideas of like, what if we built this product on chain? And then all of them are getting stopped before they can even incubate those ideas because the platform's not ready, because it just doesn't even seem possible. How much innovation are we missing as a business? Yeah. And then if we're experiencing this and like we're the most crypto forward public company in the world by far, how much innovation is the world missing? Totally. And like, that's the thesis behind Base, basically. It's like, if we can just make it really easy for developers to build these on-chain applications that can actually reach consumer scale, and then working with Coinbase, if we can make it really easy for everyday people to use those applications, we're just going to unlock this next wave of innovation that basically brings all the applications that bring billions of people on chain.
Yeah, it makes so much sense. Like at a minimum, all like you get to build on-chain Coinbase products on it, and that's kind of a no-brainer because it's hard to reason about building them anywhere else with all the different trade-offs, and you just don't control the full stack, you know?
Yep.
And then once Coinbase, it's like a little bit of almost the Amazon, like build AWS to serve your own, you know, infrastructure. Right. And then you open it up to everyone else. And there's the added benefits of everyone else can, get access to the Coinbase users. It's kind of that playbook in a way. And it's useful. It's useful in single player mode, right? Like it's just useful for a Coinbase, even if it was only a rollup that Coinbase was using.
Yes, 100%. The way I think about Base and blockchains is they're the most powerful serverless compute platform that's ever existed, because for the first time, it really is, you write your application and you put it on chain and it will run forever. And then not only that, your application, the smart contracts that you write, can use the smart contracts that anyone else in the world has written. And so rather than the kind of APIs that are accessible to that serverless platform being only APIs that like AWS creates, where they're like, we give you a storage API and we give you a XYZ API. It's like, no, now anyone can create an API that's available on this serverless platform. And you can just write an application that focuses on your very minimal business logic that interfaces and hooks into all of those other APIs. I mean, it's the world computer. I mean, this is what Ethereum is, but like, Base is basically the like scaling of the world computer. And I think like I'm pretty convinced this is going to eat all of compute. Like over the next 10, 20, 30 years, like literally everything is going to move into this new kind of like open serverless compute model that blockchains enable.
So that's super interesting. It's like almost an earlier vision for blockchains, right? Which I feel like we don't talk about as much, of like the world computer. And like it's literally just like serverless compute and you can make it do whatever you want.
Yes. And then different blockchains will kind of be like different serverless compute offerings. And then the question is like, what makes a serverless compute offering really useful? Well, you want that offering to have as many pre-built, built-in functionality as possible. And like, how do you get there? You probably don't build all those things yourself as the blockchain. Instead, you build a platform so everyone else can build all those things. And so then the kind of serverless compute offering that's a blockchain that will be the most valuable is the serverless compute offering as a blockchain that attracts the most people to build all those APIs that everyone else can use.
Right. It becomes kind of a marketplace with its own network effects, and everyone's like winning by helping everyone else.
Yeah, exactly. And it's
how does that work? Like thinking of it from a serverless compute point of view, like let's take that makes me think of applications that aren't purely, only on chain. The entire life cycle thing is happening within one smart contract or between other smart contracts. It gives me a vision of some like, closed applications within companies are calling into these functions and receiving callbacks, and there's all those kinds of relationships happening. Like how would that work? Like, do you have a specific application in mind, and like what the actual architecture of something like that would be like?
Yeah, and I can share the specific example that actually connected this mental model for me, which is there's a company called Goldfinch. I don't know.
I know Blake and Mike, and they also were on the podcast actually. Yeah,
amazing. Yeah, well, I love Blake and Mike. They're ex Coinbase people, and so I worked with Blake and Mike, and then one of their really early engineers, Mark Hudnall, I also worked with at Coinbase, and he was my co-founder at Clef before Coinbase, and so we've been working together for like a decade now at this point. And so I remember having a conversation with him about Goldfinch maybe a year and a half ago. And he was describing how they have this problem where, and for listeners, Goldfinch is basically a lending protocol where like consumers can pool capital, and then there's kind of a marketplace of underwriters who enable borrowers to come and access that capital. And so, for instance, like they're mostly serving kind of borrowers who are working in kind of developing economies. So like an example is, someone who wants to get credit to underwrite like phones for people in a developing country. They're like, hey, we need a $15 million line of credit to resell to consumers who are then going to pay us, like a little bit per month to get access to their phone. They like bring that deal to Goldfinch. There's an underwriter that kind of assesses it, and then people pooling capital, which gives the capital to borrowers. And what they were seeing is their borrowers were all of the Goldfinch pools were in USDC. That was kind of the thing that people were putting in. But a lot of their borrowers, because they were in developing countries,
they told me about this. They have the FX risk, and they're
they have FX risk, or they have FX risk, and they need to get into something they can convert into their local currency. And mostly what they can convert is Tether, USDT, which they then go into Binance. And so they saw that most of their borrowers were going through this really painful step where they were first withdrawing the USDC from Goldfinch, and then they were taking it to like Uniswap and swapping it for USDT, and then they were taking the USDT and bringing it to Binance, and then they were exchanging from USDT on Binance to their local fiat currency, and they were withdrawing it. And what Mark was building at the time when he said this to me is, we just want to take one of those steps out. And so what we're doing is we're just adding a interface to Uniswap directly in our contracts. So when the borrower withdraws, they can say, I want to withdraw in Tether. And our contracts just say, okay, let's just instantly convert USDC to USDT and give them the Tether. And like, they didn't need to go work with the Uniswap business to do that. Like, they just hit the Uniswap API as a smart contract, and it totally seamlessly did currency conversion. And that, when he described that to me, I was like, oh my God, what you're saying is that Uniswap is a serverless API for doing currency conversion that any other developer who's building on the platform of Ethereum can plug into whenever they want to build any kind of application that needs currency conversion. Wow.
Right.
Like, wow, that's crazy. And now
that is crazy.
If you look at like new products that have launched since then, there's another company that just launched, a company called SkyTeller. They just launched a product where you can get an address that goes directly to your bank account and withdraws to the fiat currency of your choice. And we're also seeing that increasingly there are stable coins that map to basically every or increasing number of kind of sovereign currencies. And so like, imagine the next version of Goldfinch's kind of off-ramp offering, where instead of saying, hey, you can withdraw USDC and we auto convert it to Tether, and then you can send Tether to Binance, and Binance, you can convert it to your local currency, and then you can withdraw the local currency. What if now it's just like, you just configure your off-ramp address in our app, and we will convert USDC to your sovereign stablecoin of choice using Uniswap, and then send it to the address that maps to your bank account. And then the people who built that thing will off-ramp it directly to your bank account.
Totally.
Like, yeah. I mean, that's crazy.
It is crazy.
That's awesome, right? And all of those pieces can be built independently. Like, they can just be built, they can be built as these little API building blocks that anyone else in the world can plug into. And so I love that example because it so clearly illustrates how, like, it illustrates this thesis of this being a serverless compute platform, and every new thing that gets deployed on it being an API that anyone can hook into. And it is already having an incredible impact on how much impact people can have, because they're building on such a higher leverage platform. Like the Goldfinch team at that time, it was like 2 engineers who were building.
That's wild. They can just leverage an exchange without talking with anyone.
Right. It's like that is, all these pieces are starting to get handled, which means that the people who are building the apps can focus on building the apps, and they can do it with small teams that are like massively leveraged. It's incredible.
Yeah. It's so true. It's interesting because like there's both serverless kind of like endpoints can both be stateless and stateful, right? There could be a stateless version of it, which you're like, what is the conversion rate between X and Y currencies? And you can get an answer back. And that's easy, that exists. But then there's like stateful, which you can just use it as a service. There though, like the question is, like at some point, the state has to transition from being like inside like a company's like state to like this like serverless, like this open world's like state that everyone understand. And that interface is where something needs to happen, right? Either the user needs to do it themselves, which is like the self-custodial model, and there's all these difficulties with user experience and security and people understanding, gas and all this crazy stuff, or like a product has to abstract that away. And for instance, there has to be some product in Kenya or Latin America that's like, hey, withdraw to your bank account, and you press this button and they just do everything for you behind the scenes. What do you think? Like, what are those trade-offs? Like, how do you think about that?
Yeah. And I think Coinbase has built its business over the last decade by doing the latter, right? Like we've basically been this abstraction layer over the chains that makes it so users don't have to deal with all the complexity and they just get a much easier experience.
Which is also just like, that is like super powerful, just taking what you said before, because you get to use these like global primitives that you wouldn't be able to otherwise. Like, even if that's the world we end up in, that's still like a meaningful step forward.
I think it absolutely is. And I think what we've seen is like building all of those abstractions over the chain. They're very complex, right? You basically have to like rebuild a bunch of constructs that are in the chain. So for instance, like in Coinbase.com, we taken all the money, like all the crypto into like, pooled hot and cold wallets. And then we build an entirely new ledger inside.
Right. Like an in-memory ledger of like what all these addresses are.
Yes, exactly. Right.
Yeah. You can go in your account and like generate a new address.
Right. And it's like, then that cascades to this massive web of Web 2 systems that are like abstracting over the blockchains to provide this seamless experience. And those systems are really, really, really expensive because we are basically like, we're rebuilding a bunch of this stuff and trying to abstract and generalize. And I think what I've seen over the last 2 years of like really sitting at this border between kind of the like legacy off-chain world and the new on-chain world, and figuring out like, how do you bring a crypto company that has been primarily built in the off-chain world for the last decade with the crypto in it kind of abstracted away into the new on-chain world. And I think what I've seen pretty consistently is anytime you have to build a product that straddles both of those worlds, it is so complex. So complex. If you're fully in the on-chain world, you get so much leverage. It's so easy. If you're fully in the off-chain world, it's easy. Like everything's handled. It's been like that forever. But when you are building products that move from off-chain to on-chain, it is super, super, super hard, complex, messy. And I think like what this has really pushed me towards and pushed, I think, parts of Coinbase towards as well, is figuring out how do we like contain those boundary areas to like really, really clear specific domains, and then enable our teams to build in the new world. And so like an example of this is like in the Coinbase app, we now have a Web3 tab, which lets you get access to basically like a fully flexible Ethereum wallet that can work across layer 1 and layer 2. But you don't have to manage any of the keys. We manage all the keys for you using like MPC, multi-party computation. But you get access to this wallet that can do anything. And that building that thing that enables it, so complex, so complex. But with that thing in place, enabling our teams to just build as if they were building a dApp, those teams can move so much faster because they're just building in the on-chain world. And so now all the complexity of bridging that gap from a user experience is handled by the team and product that has built this really cool and powerful wallet, but the teams that are building the use cases can actually just operate on this totally serverless platform and not have to think about all the off-chain complexity.
Totally.
And I think that's the world that we need to increasingly be building towards. It's like finding those points where off-chain and on-chain necessarily need to meet. And I think identity is another really good example of it. And then building really, really well thought out connections that enable folks to leverage that off-chain data and leverage that off-chain infrastructure while keeping their applications and the work that they're doing in a fully on-chain context. Because that is what allows them to move so rapidly.
Totally. Into the Bytecode is sponsored by Privy. One of the biggest problems we're grappling with as builders working on crypto-enabled applications is how to make the right trade-offs between user experience on the one hand and security and privacy on the other hand. How do we promote self-custody and ownership while letting the application shine rather than the crypto behind it? So Privy plays an important role here. They provide simple onboarding so anyone can connect to your app easily by allowing them to sign in with an existing wallet or by making it easy for you to provision a new self-custodial wallet for them, linking to social logins like Google, Twitter, or Discord. I personally have faith in Privy because of the team. Henry Stern, who's one of the co-founders, was previously on an episode of this podcast, so you can listen to that conversation for more of a deep dive. And he and his partner, Asta Lee, have been thinking about data privacy and security for a long, long time. And you can see this in the level of thought they're putting into the product. So if you're working on a new product and thinking about how to reach a wider group of users without compromising on either user experience or privacy and security, then I encourage you to check out Privy at privy.io. If you're a builder and you're looking at working on something new, I think the space of trade-offs is, or has been for some time, that I can build something that's fully on-chain and leans into what's uniquely enabled by crypto. And I can have a tiny user base because it's only the people who currently can use crypto. And, most of my friends still hold some cryptocurrencies, but there's no way they're going to figure out how to use this stuff. And we've been saying that for a long time. And then there's alternative path, which is I need to abstract away this complexity, and my product within its own user flows needs to work for a normal person. And what you're saying is that this second pattern, the second path is you're signing up for a world of pain. Like the level of complexity you're taking on is insane. And what would you do? Would you just build the purely on-chain thing and with the assumption that there are smart, hardworking teams and people building the L2s, the wallets, the block explorers, all this stuff is getting simplified? Is that the bet you would take?
This is why we're building Base, right? This is it, right? This is it, right? It's we want to make it so that's no longer the choice, right? We want to break that false dichotomy. And it's not just Base, it's Coinbase and Base, right? It's on one hand, we need the platform where people can create those applications. And then on the other hand, we need the interfaces where users can use those applications and have all the abstraction, the complexity abstracted away from them. And I think our thesis, if we bring those two things together for developers now, they can just build on the incredibly powerful platform and trust that the users are going to be able to use it, because Coinbase is going to be building these incredibly easy to use interfaces like the Web3 tab in the Coinbase app that just let them use the app they want to use. That's the whole bet. It's making it incredibly easy for developers to build and incredibly easy for users to use, and to connect those two things to bring the next billion people on chain.
Yeah, that's super exciting.
It gets me so fired up.
It makes me think of, I think it was Coinbase Wallet back in the day that had a dApp browser. And the idea was that I imagine it's a similar idea, right? We're gonna like simplify the UX of like using all these dApps, and you can like do your thing on the other side. But maybe part of the learning is that that's like too high level of an abstraction. Like you need to just give people a blockchain and they need to build their own front ends, their own products. And like you only simplify like how users go into this ecosystem and how they come out of it, rather than try to build an interface for an individual application.
Yeah, well, I think it's a little bit of both, right? Like on the user side, I think we want to like do some curation that like lets them discover. And then on developer side, we want to just make it easy for them to build the things that users then eventually discover. And
Yeah.
so I like with Base specifically, it's definitely like, let's give the developers a maximally open and flexible platform, because we can't like determine like, oh, if you build within these guardrails or you build within this shape, that's going to be a great product. Like I've spent too much time with engineers to know the second you try and give them a like draw within these lines, they're like, I don't want to do this.
Totally.
And then it leads to worse outcomes. And so I think our thesis with Base is like, here it is. Like, here's the platform that's both going to be open and available and give you all the flexibility in the world that you want. And because it's built in a way that's kind of incubated by Coinbase and connected to Coinbase, we're going to be handling all the complexity on the user side. That's going to make it possible for people to use it in a really easy way.
Yeah.
And I do like you said this like maybe a minute or two ago. You were like, I feel like we've been like stuck on this for a while, like a long time.
Yeah.
And we have. And I think this is one of the things that is kind of hard for me to describe to people about the moment that I feel like we're in right now.
Yeah.
Where I feel like for the first time, these pieces are finally coming together. Like people actually are building incredibly useful applications on chain. They exist. And the user experiences as a result of kind of this integration are getting easy enough for everyday people to use. And I feel like a lot of the crypto industry is kind of like traumatized by the last 10 years of us being like, we're almost there. Like it's going to be there. But like, we're almost there, everyone. Like the pieces are here for the first time ever.
It's a chain link system, right? Which is that if like a single chain in the link a link in the chain doesn't work, the entire thing doesn't work, right? So if we don't have good on ramps and off ramps, a good wallet, like any of these things is enough to break the whole thing. And then there's this weird, supply and demand, like chicken and egg problem, which is like, I'm going to build an infrastructure company because these applications need a better wallet. And then the applications are like, I can't get meaningful users because there's no wallet that exists. And people have been working in parallel. And it's almost like, this is, I think, why something like Base can actually be a super effective leveraged move.
Missing link in the chain, right? It's like the one thing that then links up the 100,000 other chain links in the chain that everyone else has been building for the last decade and makes this work. And that's our bet. And that's what gets me so excited about it.
If you were to talk through like the user journey or user experience of like, take one of my friends who's like has some ETH on Coinbase, and I want to use some like crypto application. Like, I don't know, like one of my favorite musicians is doing like an NFT drop. And in today's world, I would need to set up a wallet, transfer my ETH over there, like use the smart change my like roll up, like a transaction fails, like figure out what a wallet is. Like, it's like so complicated. So why isn't that working today? Or maybe it is, but like what have been like the critical missing pieces, you think? And then I've heard you say that you said something crazy like this year we're going to get 100 million developers on chain, and next year 2024 we're going to get 1 billion users on chain. Which I could see, if all the puzzle pieces click together and crypto is just like a function, a serverless type thing that you can embed into any application in the world, like that could happen. But what are the missing pieces there?
Yeah. I said 1 million developers this year, 1 billion users next year.
Okay.
Which,
Okay.
I think like,
So a
I think
factor of 1,000. That
I
makes
think,
sense.
I think it's aggressive, but I also think it's possible, right? Like if you look at how adoption curves for really, really great products go, they grow very fast. And I think,
Right.
again, we've been kind of traumatized by the last 10 years, but at some point, whether it's this year or next year, the experiences are going to get good enough that we will start the month over month growth of crypto users around the world, and it will not stop until every single person in the world is using crypto. And it's going to be relentless. And when we look back on it, we will be like, wow, of course that
Yeah.
happened. But I don't know exactly where it'll happen, but we're going to start that up curve soon. So in terms of going to your question of like kind of where the kind of breakages in the experience and how will that look, I mean, I think you did a pretty good job of describing it. It's like, I mean, let's not even think about it if you're a person who has Ethereum. Like, let's say you're a new person who
Right.
like opened the Coinbase app for the first time and is like, I'm into crypto and I want to learn more and go buy an NFT that my friend is making. So like a few different problems you run into. So first is like, okay, now I'm going to buy ETH in my Coinbase app because that's what everyone told me to get. But then up until recently, like I can't use that ETH to buy this NFT on the website. Like, what do I need to do? Okay, now I need to move it to a new wallet. Okay, now I gotta go set up another wallet. Maybe it's Coinbase Wallet, maybe it's MetaMask. Okay, now I gotta go transfer it to that other wallet. Okay, now I transferred $5 of ETH because it says it's $5 on there to buy. Okay, now I go click buy and
It's
it's
not enough.
$5, but then also there's $5 of gas and I only sent $5 and I paid $3 to send it. So I don't have enough money. Okay, now I got to go get more ETH in Coinbase and I got to send it over there. Now I have $10 and now I spent $10 and $5 of that goes to my friend and $5 of it goes to Ethereum, I guess. Like it just gets burned and destroyed and like cool, I guess. Like I think that would be the user journey of like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm new, I go there. I think
That's what it would
what
be
that
like literally today. I mean, that's what you would go through, right?
Yeah, I think that's what most people will go through today. Yeah,
Yeah.
but I think we're starting to change it, right? Like, where I think we'll be in the next few months with Base is you'll open up your Coinbase app and you'll see an NFT on the homepage and you'll just click buy, and it won't be like buying it and putting it into a custodial walled garden. That will just be an NFT from Zora that's surfaced on your homepage, and when you click buy, that will execute an on-chain transaction that will be done on Base via this kind of embedded Web3 wallet. And it will then take you to your wallet where the NFT will be, and that will have executed at 10-cent price from a gas perspective. And so all $5 will have gone to your friends, and all of that will happen in less than 60 seconds. And it won't be Coinbase's walled garden, like, which I think is the
Yeah.
powerful thing. Like someone could have built air quote NFTs and put them in the Coinbase app and have them like done in our custodial way a while ago. But this is not that. This is us basically composing a few pieces, which is the L2 plus the embedded wallet plus the fiat on ramps to make it so we can connect all those things into a totally seamless user experience that ends with the user having a fully flexible open Web3 wallet on a fully flexible open on-chain platform that's Base that they can continue to manage in Coinbase, or they can move somewhere else if they wanted to, and that they can reuse now that they've activated it with ETH for gas to do anything else that they want, like a Uniswap trade or borrow money or
Yeah.
whatever it is. Like that, kind of like you said, there's all of these steps in the user experience that are kind of links in the chain. And we've gradually built good enough links in the chain. But when you combine them all, the chain is really, really long and we're still missing a few pieces. And I think what Base is going to do is it's going to kind of put the last one in. And then it's also going to allow us to kind of compress all those links in the chain into like an incredibly seamless experience that is still using all those links, but just does it as if it was, abstracted away infrastructure.
Yeah. And that makes sense. And what if I go on a website that isn't Coinbase and it's like some, third party product, and then it's they, if that website is using Base as a kind of backend of sorts, you press this button in the top right, you log in by typing in, I don't know, how would you log in there?
Like, let's just say people are still on mobile. It's like you go to the website,
Right.
you open it up,
Flips
you say
over to
connect
your other
wallet.
wallet.
It opens up in your Coinbase wallet, which is the same wallet where you have your NFT now. That's
Right.
still in your Coinbase app. And now it's just showing you the browser in the Coinbase app. And you, again, just click buy and it's all handled for you. And it's still using Base and it's still using that embedded wallet and still putting you in the open platform and still fully open to anyone. Like, when I was saying initially in that NFT, that's not even me, like NFT is not going to show up on your homepage. That's not going to, I don't think Coinbase is necessarily, it's going to be Coinbase.com. I think what we're going to see is like all of those NFTs are going to be on Zora and Sound and Spinamp and like name your NFT platform that you care about. But then because they're all built in an open way, Coinbase can basically aggregate over them and say, here are the trending NFTs that like are relevant to you. And then when you click mint, it mints it using the Zora smart contracts, using your wallet that's embedded in Coinbase and puts the NFT in your wallet. And so I think this is actually one of the really powerful things about crypto and Base is like, it's built to be an open application platform.
Right.
Like that's the whole thing, is like anyone can build these things and then anyone else can interact with them. And I think that's going to enable us to build all sorts of new experiences that bring together all of this creativity that's happening across many, many apps and websites into like unified experiences for users that are just like really easy to use.
Totally. Yeah. And so I think another part like that, I think there's many, versions of this that I think would be incredibly useful on their own. There's one version of it that I think is like probably most useful, which is where Base and a user on Base's ability to interact with any applications is totally permissionless, right? So there's no one has an ability to not let them do that, and that's what allows all the crazy shit to happen, because you can't stop them. The users making their own sovereign choices at some level, and this is like infrastructure that's running, and it Base has this, given that it's built using the OP stack, it's a roll up on Ethereum, so all the data, like you can always leave. So it's fundamentally different than a company opening up their API.
100%.
There is the question of like, the same way that a staker, a home validator, including certain transactions in a block, like they may not be able to based on what jurisdiction in. There's like those sorts of questions. I feel there's around the wallet, like the wallets are non-custodial too, right? So once the user moves, like how do you think about those? And I think either world is fine again, but it will inform like what sorts of things happen. Or is this like a kind of the Base roll up? Is this, clean world of like good things are happening here, and if you want to like get into like weird stuff, you go into this like other place, and there's bridges that you can use to do that?
No, it's a great question. It's one that lots of people are asking, and I think before I talk about Base, worth just like looking back at Coinbase's track record on this, which is if you look at our response on things like Tornado Cash, where you have Treasury saying Tornado Cash, we're putting it on the sanctions list, and you have Coinbase working with a bunch of plaintiffs to basically sue the Treasury and say this is unconstitutional. You can't put open source software on the sanctions list. It's open source software. And that ability to run and leverage open source software is a constitutional right. A similar kind of stance that we've taken with Ethereum validators, where we've advocated for the exact same thing and say these things are running open source software, and we have a constitutional right to run open source software and to support our users in doing that as well. Like that's our belief. That's our belief. It's like the underlying protocols and platforms must be open. They must be permissionless. They must be available to everyone, because that is what enables us to build this new global on-chain crypto economy. And then on top of that, like at the interface level, when we're talking about custodial interfaces that are managing things for users,
that's
like,
totally fair game. You have
totally
to
fair
comply
game.
with the regulations of your jurisdiction.
You got to comply with exactly, right? Like
Yeah.
if you are onboarding customers into a custodial interface that is domiciled in the United States, it's like comply. Like I think the thing that we've been pushing on and really talking about with regulators is like, how do we just make sure that there's clear guidelines and rules here? Because what's happening right now is the lack of clarity is pushing innovation out the United States. Like we see that happening every day. You know, literally, like I meet with so many builders and developers, and the amount of money that people have to spend at early stage companies in this country to try and just get a modicum of peace of mind around whether what they're doing is going to potentially like put them in jail. Like that's money that otherwise would be going to jobs. Like creating other jobs in the country. And so I think our perspective is the underlying platform, the underlying protocols must remain open. They're decentralized. They are this substrate that's going to enable all this global innovation and global crypto economy to kind of have such a big impact on the world. And we want to be working with policymakers to create that regulatory clarity, basically, to create those kind of common sense regulations that protect the on-chain platform and protect consumers at the interface level. So how that translates to Base is we basically think about Base as an extension of Ethereum, and we think about layer 2 as an extension of Ethereum, and we believe that that extension should remain open and accessible to everyone. And that's how we're building Base. We're building it to be decentralized. We're building it to be open for everyone. And so Coinbase and our kind of regulated interfaces for customers will continue to apply all of those rules, and we will work to preserve that openness and accessibility for Base, because we think it's like the internet. And we believe that the internet, like the internet, Ethereum and the on-chain platform should be open for everyone. So, you know, that's a complex balance, right? Like doing these things is hard,
juicy one.
Especially in this regulatory environment, it's hard, but this is what it's all about. Like, this is why we're here. We are here to fight for the open crypto economy. And I said this on a podcast the other day, but the day we launched Base, that night, Brian, our CEO, messaged me and he said two things. He said, one, like, that was a great launch. Now you have to deliver. Like,
no pressure.
Just is like, great. Thank you. I'm here for it. And then two, you have to decentralize this thing. Like, there's no other path here. We can't not deliver on this promise that we are making. And, you know,
that's almost the beauty of it, which is with any of these applications, like you're almost like forced to decentralize. Otherwise, you're not, and you have to fit within a regulatory regime that isn't designed for these things.
Yeah, and also if you don't do it, like, luckily our industry and communities has a lot of good sense about them, and they're like pretty good at detecting bullshit. And they're pretty good at being like, oh, these people are talking a big game, but not delivering results. And they'll sniff that out. And I think this is why we like, if we just think about the like level of adoption and growth that Ethereum has seen, I think a lot of that comes because our industry really has identified, wow, this is like maximally decentralized. Like, this is the shelling point that can actually serve as the foundation for everything else to be decentralized. And that's worth fighting for. And it's worth putting our resources into. And I don't think there's a world where we can just like launch Base and say, we're going to decentralize and then not decentralize, and people will adopt it. Like, I just don't. I mean, particularly developers, I don't think developers will adopt that. I don't think the community will adopt it. And so, like, we obviously have to deliver. We have to put our money where our mouth is, and we have to like put the wins on quarter over quarter. But that's what we're going to do. We're going to let our actions speak for themselves and continue fighting for the crypto economy to remain open for everyone. Because that's what's going to lead to us getting to this world where everyone everywhere in the world is on a level playing field.
Totally.
And that, I don't think there's anything more important than that.
Yeah.
It's super, super important.
Yeah. Wait, one kind of, well, adjacent, unrelated question to this, thinking of this infrastructure as potentially like serverless functions that you can call
Yeah.
into. I sometimes feel that even naming what we're doing as crypto is like the wrong thing to do, because we're like singling it out as this like independent thing that's, that's like a thing you can build a crypto application, but ultimately it's a technology, and it's a part of the technology stack. And we all know this potential trap of like talking about technologies and solutions and not problems. And I think that the world will probably ultimately live in is that many applications incorporate elements of crypto in them.
Right.
And then I think that, calling what we're doing crypto also opens it up to any single bad actor doing something wrong, right? Tarnishes crypto as a whole. The fact that it is this like identifiable thing. How do you think about that? Where do you land on that question? Like, I feel like maybe we should just abolish like the like crypto ecosystem as a thing. Maybe it's too soon to do that. Maybe we need like the momentum and the coherence of like working forward on something, and it might happen. It might happen naturally at some point,
Yeah. Hmm. I think generally it's still a little too soon. And I'm trying to think why I believe that. I think the reality is that, like, for both businesses and users, there are going to be like step function changes if they can build with crypto and they can use crypto in their quality of life, their efficiency, kind of all of these things. And I don't think that those step function changes and improvements are going to, like, they're not going to just happen by default. Like, people have to opt into those things. Like, businesses have to elect, we're going to use this. And some of that can be abstracted away. But like, having watched this happen at Coinbase for the last 10 years, like even at the biggest crypto company in the world, like it still requires leaps of faith to say, let's build this thing with crypto, let's build this thing on chain rather than doing it the way we've always done it. And so I think that there's still this, like, I still think we have to convince some people to take the leap, and say, like, you should elect to do this because it's going to deliver X, Y, and Z. And some of that can be wrapped up in like, oh, just use this new product because it's better. But I think some of it also is just like getting people a little bit over the hump. And I've been, I've been shying away from using crypto. I've been using on-chain more now. And that's like, it's not that I've been shying away from. It's also like, I think people have historically used the kind of like decentralized versus centralized as a big term. It's like, do you want to build this in a decentralized way or centralized way? And I'm finding on-chain to just be a much better descriptor because it can be inclusive of all these things.
Right.
Like, you can have a centralized system that's on-chain. You can have a decentralized system that's on-chain. And I think it also has a nice kind of like parallel with online. And I think a lot of people have this mental of like, we went from an offline world to an online world, and that improved my quality of life. And there's all these concrete things that I can like point to where it's like, once we went online, these things got better. And my intuition is that if we can start just connecting a few dots with people where it's like, oh, this thing's on chain now and it's better than it was online, then people are going to start asking. It's like, when are you going on chain? Like, when is this product going to be available?
That clarifies the distinction between, an intermediary like centralized application that calls itself a crypto application, but it's not actually on chain.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. We're going to see. I was having another conversation with someone who I really trust and respect, and he was talking about how like one risk with like using something like on chain is that there's like a heterogeneity of what on chain means. It's like, if you deploy on Ethereum, the decentralization and security characteristics of that app that a user is using are very different than if you're deploying on like some other chain that's much less decentralized and secure, but it might look or seem the same to users. And I think his concern was, it is kind of like, are we at risk basically of kind of like grouping all these things together and then like accidentally leading users into like bad environments that expose them to risk? And we debated a bit back and forth on this, and the analogy that he drew was with kind of like online. Like if everyone's connection to online is relatively equal, like there's no like I'm on this online that's worse than that online. That was his claim. I'm actually not sure I'm convinced by that, right? Like if you're in a given country that the government can shut down the online, which we've seen happen many times in the last few years.
Right.
Like,
or if you're not using HTTPS, they can read your traffic.
Right. Or if you were on AOL, not the internet back in the day, like those are all different forms of online. They're more abstracted because we're further along the technology cycle. But I think it's an interesting question of like, what is the risk of like kind of papering over these, like what is the risk of trying to aggregate and like bring these under one consolidated mental model for users? My general feeling on this is like, I think that developers in particular, like I said earlier, in crypto in particular, and the people who are going to create the most useful applications, they're very attuned to like what matters. And like the fact that decentralization and security matters, and downstream of developers are the applications they create. And my intuition is that the best applications are going to be built on the platforms that developers want to use because they're decentralized and open and secure. And so I think that probably like the internet, this will be a market problem and that a market solution where it's just like the things that win will become on chain and the things that will not be on chain because they won't really be things. But it's going to be interesting to see. And I do think we have an obligation as an industry to continue advocating for like maximally decentralized, maximally open source, freely available systems.
Totally. I think I was having similar conversation with friends, and one not directly related to decentralized or the open point, but looking at what's happening with ChatGPT as an example of when something is super, super compelling, you just like give all of your data to it,
Right.
Yeah, like we care about privacy preserving, but I literally paste in entire things into there, and I'm like, what do you think about this? And it's an interesting thing. There's this like trade-off curve that we intuitively kind of land on.
And my hope is that with on-chain platforms, we can make it so that those applications are easier to build in a way that is both compelling and privacy preserving. But we have some work to do. I also think ChatGPT is another great example of like just how quickly products can grow. Like if you look at Chat, like when there's like 100 million, 200 million, 300 million users of ChatGPT, and it's like 6 months old, like
that's incredible.
It's incredible because it's an incredible product. And I think, again, we're also traumatized from 10 years, but we're getting to the point where crypto is an incredible product and where we're going to hit that growth curve. So it's actually, it's happening. It's happening. It's just,
So maybe like one nice transition. I saw this tweet, I think from like 2021, where you said that I'm now 100% end-to-end in crypto for my primary financial account. You're like getting paid in crypto, and like are you still doing that? And what's that been like?
Am I still doing that? Yes. I get paid via Coinbase. It converts to a mix of ETH and USDC, and then I spend out of there. I've had to switch away some of my spending out of Coinbase because Coinbase debit card doesn't have the ability to have like family members on it, which is like I got married and I have a wife. And so it's like it doesn't have the flexibility basically that I actually need. And so I've had to shift some of my spending out, but all of my inflows from salaries are coming from crypto, and pretty much all of my financial All of my financial life is in crypto. Now it's the one exception to that is like, obviously I've worked at Coinbase for a while, and so I have some Coinbase stock, and that's not in crypto. Like that's held by,
So outside of
whoever.
the Coinbase stock, you don't own any like stocks or anything like that. It's all,
Not really, no.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like I
What's
have some
what's
stable coins, and then I have like Ethereum basically. Yeah.
what's your like crypto stack? Is it Coinbase Wallet? Like how, yeah, what do you,
Yeah, it's a
as someone
mix.
who's like probably tried to reduce the friction as much as possible for yourself, what is your current setup?
It's a mix. It's it's a mix because I like to do a lot of things, and also I've been using crypto for a long time, so I have a lot of legacy baggage of like
Right.
my old
Yeah.
systems. But I use Coinbase for a lot of kind of the vast majority of my kind of like crypto is stored on Coinbase, either in my Coinbase account or in vaults in my Coinbase account, which is like time locked accounts on
Mm,
Coinbase, or in that Web3 wallet, which is like managed by Coinbase. So that's where the vast majority of it is. But then I also have a mobile wallet that I use pretty frequently, which is in Coinbase Wallet, which is just like a seed phrase that I store in my Coinbase Wallet. And I also have connected on my browser in the Coinbase Wallet extension. And then I also have hardware wallets, a few different ones, but the ones that I primarily use are Grid Plus, which is
mm,
like
yeah.
it's really cool. It's kind of like a little credit card that you slide into this desktop thing, and that's the best hardware wallet I found, like far and away,
Yeah.
from a usability. And so that's what I use for hardware wallets. And then I I also, for certain things I do on chain, I have Gnosis safes where it's like a multi-sig where I'll have a few different signers on it that are like basically securing it. And for that, I use a mix of my mobile wallet, my hardware wallet, and then the Coinbase Web3 wallets. So
Nice.
it's a little chaotic. Like
Yeah.
I don't think that my crypto setup is a crypto setup that could scale to anyone other than like highly sophisticated people. But for where I'm at and what I'm trying to do, it works really well. I think that most everyday people um, will likely just like move towards a world where they have like one primary crypto wallet that I think in the medium term is probably going to be like a multi-sig safe with multiple kind of signers on it that they have backed up in different places or with family members, and then a bunch of controls around what can come in and out of that wallet, or really what can go out of the wallet on like time amount based things. And I think it's actually gonna be really like pretty possible to rebuild the sort of like surety and security that people feel from their bank account in on-chain accounts that are like designed as multi-sig smart contract wallets.
Totally.
So we got a little more work to do to get there, but it's getting better every day.
Totally. And it's fun being an early adopter in the meantime.
I love being an early adopter. And I mean, one thing I'll say is that in the last 6 months, my usage of crypto continues to just increase
Mm,
every month. Like I now mint more NFTs like in a week than I probably minted in 9 months ago, because I've gotten really into like these like open edition NFTs that are super cheap.
hmm.
Where it's just like you're just kind of like collecting a piece of history or a piece of art, and it costs like $4.
Totally.
And it's just like, oh, this is a no-brainer for me. And then I can see my friends who've collected them. Like I think that's really probably the biggest behavior change for me in crypto, is using crypto just as like a social
More
fun
socially.
activity.
Yeah.
That's really
Where are
changed
you
the last
doing
6 months.
that? Where are you collecting the open editions and like yeah.
It's mostly things I discover on Twitter or Farcaster,
Yeah.
and then I just like click out through and I mint it in Coinbase Wallet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's it's fast, and like once you have your wallet set up, what was I doing? Oh, I use Farcaster, which is like a decentralized social network, and then someone sent me an invite to Blue Sky the other day,
Yeah.
and I downloaded the Blue Sky app, and it asked me to create a username and password. And I was like
Mm,
offended. Like
mm.
literally, I got to that step and I was like, "Excuse me, like you want me to do what?" um, because it like once you have a crypto wallet set up, and you get used to just connecting your wallet and logging in, creating a username and password is horrible. It's so bad. It's like,
it sucks. It's true.
It sucks. Versus like, oh,
it's good. It's important not to forget that, right? It's not only that crypto UX sucks, like it's actually better in some places. And this is a really great example of it.
It's way better. Yeah. Another example, like I was talking with someone today. I was like, having to wire, or someone else was saying they're having to wire money, and they were all these issues with wiring money. That sucks. So you pay $35 and you have to like put in all these form fields, and you're like, did I get them right? Like, is it working?
Totally.
Versus in crypto, it's like, give me your address, and
you have to screen like save a PDF of the receipt somewhere, and
it's like, it's awful. Yeah, who was it? Spencer Noon, who works in Variant. The last day or 24 hours or something, he's been, I forget what exactly his language is, but he's like, it's a meme where it's like, crypto doesn't do anything. And then it's like, Gnosis Safe stores $40 billion, which is more than most banks in the United States. But crypto doesn't do anything that's useful. And it's like Uniswap has executed like more volume than like most centralized exchanges on a daily basis for the last few months, but like crypto isn't useful. It's like there's this, we've kind of like psyoped ourselves, I feel like, as an industry, where we look at crypto and we're like, it's too hard, no one can do anything with it, like it's not useful. And then you actually look and you're like, holy crap, like people are using this to run businesses, they're using this to like trade their assets, they're using it to send money to their family, and like the way they use it compared to the alternative in the legacy system, it's 10 to 100 times cheaper, globally available, way easier. Like we're upgrading the system. Like this is what it is, and when we upgrade the system, it gets 10x better, but we've somehow like psyoped ourselves into being like, yeah, but the like new system's too hard, and like, you know, it doesn't actually do anything. It's not true. It's like, don't listen to that. Like every day, millions of people are using the new system and it's working great for them.
Yeah.
And there's obviously a lot more we need to do, but like, it's easy to lose sight of the fact that like in 10 years, I mean, if you start with Ethereum, which I think is really the beginning of, you know, the on-chain financial system, in 7 years, 8 years, 7.5 years, we've rebuilt huge swaths of the world's economy in software that is now improving every month, getting better and better and better. That's crazy and awesome. And we should be proud of that. And we should like celebrate that and commit to doing more and making it better.
Yeah. Love that. It's a good reminder. For our last few minutes, do you mind if we switch to a couple personal topics?
Yeah.
So I asked Liam in advance, Liam Horn, who's a mutual friend of both of ours, and I know you guys have spent a bunch of time together. And I asked him what would be interesting topics to get into, and he shared a somewhat cryptic, but I thought interesting prompt that you have good life principles to dig into. And I wonder, you know, what is he referring to, and what are some of these life principles? And I can maybe get a sense of it just through talking with you, of this optimism that you have, and but what are who are you? What are you made of on the inside?
I wonder what he's referring to. But I mean, I think a lot of, I went to Quaker School from the time I was 5 to the time I was 18. I don't know if you know what Quakerism is, but it's like it's a sect of Christianity. And the whole thesis of it is like, there's that of God in everyone. And so I didn't grow up religious, but like, it's basically a principle kind of like everyone's special and everyone is like sacred in a way. And so in Quakerism, like there's no religious leader, like there's no priest or pastor or anything like that. Like the weekly religious tradition is what's called meeting for worship. and everyone gets in a room, and it's like a square room where there's usually benches and everyone faces each other, and you just sit in silence for an hour. And as
Wow.
people are moved to kind of speak, they can just stand up and share what they're feeling. And so from the time I was 5 to the time I was 18, I did Quaker meeting every week, or meeting for worship every week. And I just got drilled in these, like, what were the Quaker values, which has an acronym called SPICES, which stands for simplicity, peace, integrity, community, equality, and stewardship. So it's like 13 years of just getting those drilled into me. And I find that those are such a huge part of who I am. It's like when I run into some moral tension or something, like that's where I come from. I feel really grateful, like just so grateful to have that.
Simplicity, peace, integrity,
community,
equality, stewardship.
Yeah.
Which one of those have you, like, are you like feeling like you have to touch into these days? Maybe just so I understand what they mean in more depth, because I'm sure after spending a lifetime kind of thinking about them and bringing them into your life.
I mean, I think integrity, like the simplicity and peace ones, I think those are kind of like, the integrity one, like I don't lie really, like I never lie. It's if I lie, I find that I get so anxious about the fact that I lied. I have to tell the truth. So that's definitely a big one, and it's interesting. Like the place where I probably found the most tension with that is working in a large organization of people. It's like there's all sorts of weird things that happen, and I find that like I have a very hard time participating in anything other than just being 100% authentic with like what I'm seeing and feeling to people. And that has, it has its costs and trade-offs, but I think that's a big one. Community, I feel a ton of right now as we're working on Base. Like one of our values for Base is this idea of Base is for everyone. And it's really about just like trying to show the world that this is meant to be a place where like, it's not just for Coinbase, it's for everyone. It's not just for the United States, it's for everyone. It's not just for DeFi, it's for everyone. And the way that I like most authentically feel the way to like do that is just trying to like meet everyone where they are in some way, which like it leads to a lot of what I think might be classified as like low value interactions, where it's like someone will send me a message and I'll just send them back like, cool, thanks for sharing that. Or like, awesome, I'm so glad you're doing that. Like, but just like trying to show people that like, I'm just here for you, to here to support you building, here to like,
so making a point of reply, like kind of acknowledging each person, even if it's like in a super quick way.
Even if it's a quick way, just like being there and being like, you're a human being who I see. And like, I'm not perfect at it. Like I can't, and maybe that'll have to change as, things get bigger, but like, I get a lot of inbound, and like every email I reply to, like every message I get, or almost all messages I get, if they're like an authentic message where someone sends me something that's like real, I'll reply to it and I'll say something. Which like a lot of the time I sometimes I get in my head a lot. I'm like, is this high value? Like,
I have the exact same thing actually. Like, not maybe I don't get, a deluge of messages, but I've been, I definitely feel the trade-off of like, you can't put time into every inbound thing that comes in, because that's an unbounded set and your time is like limited, and like you're ultimately allocating your time to the things that matter. But I have a really difficult time just not replying. And so I've tried to find, similar to what you're describing, like shorter and quicker ways to, with some level of kindness, like turn the thing around. And it's interesting though.
It's been a thing I've said, like, we have an ecosystem team at Coinbase. I mean, at Base, and we get so much inbound. So many people want to be building on Base, and so many people send us like, we want to partner. It's like we can't have a meeting every time. But what I've said to that team is like, you will reply to every single person.
Mm-hmm.
Like every single person will get a reply. Now, is that going to be the reply that they want? No, it doesn't have to be. Like 90% of the time, it doesn't have to be. But we're going to treat them as human beings who deserve some enough time and attention to acknowledge their existence. And I don't know, it's hard to know, like, is that the right trade-off in time and attention? But it feels authentic to me, and it feels authentic to what we're trying to build here. So that's another big one. And then one that's not in the spices category, but like is just very much, I'm just like a eternal optimist, like eternal optimist. Like I think that, yeah, I think anything's possible, and that as a like society, we can just achieve so much if we're just positive about the way the world works. And that's another big part of who I am.
Where does that come from? Is that more of just the way you are emotionally, naturally, or is there some, logic structure you can like build up to of why one should be an optimist?
I think it's just kind of the way I am naturally. I don't know. And I think I like probably credit to my parents. Like, I think they, like, from a young age, they told me that anything was possible. And like, they just said, go, like, do what you want. They supported me. They always said yes, so yeah. And then another way that one manifests is like this other mantra that I have for myself and for our team, which is like, kill people with kindness. It's like, I will not engage in like negativity. Really, like, you're not going to find me saying, oh, like, these people are doing a bad job, or like, oh, like, I disagree and therefore I'm going to be in conflict with you. It's just like, it doesn't compute for me. It's like everyone's trying their best for the most part in the world. And like, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to be relentlessly positive. And people are going to bring negative energy, and they're going to bring critiques and aggression and whatever it is. But I'm just not going to do that. I'm just going to be like, thank you for sharing your thoughts. Like, thank you for caring enough to be angry. I hear you, I see you, and I'm here to do my best. And like, would love to do that with you. But if you're not interested, like, that's cool. That's okay. Like, everyone gets to make their own decisions.
Can you think back to like moments, or like a moment or a period of time, or like something that shaped you in this way? Like, is there a reason that you've internalized these messages so deeply?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I can't think back to like a single specific moment. I think at this point, it feels like a lot of lived experience where Totally. It's like, if I'm just relentlessly positive and optimistic for the last, however many years of my life, it's worked, right? Like, people are willing to believe more because I believe and because I'm positive. People are willing to come back to the table because I'm coming back to the table.
Yeah.
I feel like optimism is, I don't know.
It's funny that you're collaborating with Optimism too.
Well, I mean, it's like, it was,
There's some like poetry in that.
Yeah, and I mean, like, so many reasons why we're working with Optimism, but definitely a lot of feelings of like, these are just these people who I feel very values aligned with, and who I think share a lot of our vision for the future. And like, we're really, in order to rebuild the world's economy and rebuild like pretty much every part of the world on this new on-chain platform, it's going to be a massive team effort. Like, there's no other way about it. And I feel like the base Optimism collaboration is kind of like the starting point of what will be like a super team collaboration, like hundreds of teams, hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people, all just working together with that same feeling of positivity of like, we can do this. Like, we can rebuild and upgrade the system. We can believe in a future that is better for everyone, that puts everyone on a level playing field. We can come at that from a perspective of abundance and like optimism, rather than a place of scarcity and zero sumness. That's what it's all about. Like, why else are we even doing this?
Wow, it's cool how it maps to your personal values. Like almost, it's kind of interesting in that way.
It is. Well, this is like when we going back to the beginning of our conversation, when I stepped back from my previous role at Coinbase and stepped into trying to figure out this next thing, I had this feeling in my stomach of like, there's something here. Like, I don't know what it is, but there's something here. And it was like a year of struggling, honestly. And then we landed on Base and we started working with Optimism. We started doing all these things. And my feeling like more and more is just like, this was it. Like, I didn't know what it was specifically, but like, I've kind of been building towards this. Like this, building an open ecosystem for the world that's like, I feel like I was like born for this. Like all of my 30 years of life feels like it has been bringing me to building this thing. And I didn't really know it. And I didn't know it for the last year and a half, 2 years, as we were trying to figure out what that thing was. But now that I'm here and now that I'm doing my job and figuring out like what's required of me in this job, it's like I have what's required of me. It's inside of me. And I just need to figure out how do I like express that in its maximal sense. And if I can do that and I can convince a bunch of other people to do that with me and believe in this future, then like anything is possible. And that's like it's incredible.
That's so beautiful.
Like incredibly blessed. Yeah, I feel incredibly blessed because I feel like I'm working on the thing that I was meant to be working on.
Yeah. That's so powerful. I've like almost started. That's like such a beautiful thing. And I've noticed that I've talked with a few friends about this, like my whole mental model of like when like magic happens is when that alignment happens between a person and what they're working on. And I've seen it happen a few times now with friends who, start working on something and it feels like it's what they've been, all the puzzle pieces fit together in retrospect. And it's such a beautiful thing. I love hearing that.
Yeah. Well, I love it too. It's awesome. And it doesn't make it,
doesn't make it any easier.
Doesn't make it any easier. Right.
But I think even putting aside how it goes, the fact that sincerity of intention is there is super powerful. Like that's just like that's a beautiful thing in its own right, regardless of like what happens from here.
And that's what gets me like through the hardest, most stressful, anxious moments where it's just like, even if this doesn't work, this was the thing I was meant to do. And so whatever path that is and wherever that ends up, I will have been doing what I was meant to do. And that's what it's all about. So
hell yeah.
Feel pretty blessed.
Well, I'm happy to know that someone like you is leading this project. That makes me way more optimistic about what the future could hold.
I appreciate hearing that. We got a lot of work to do, and we got a lot to prove, and we got a lot to. We got to show up and do our best work. So I'm optimistic and positive. We'll keep killing everyone with kindness, and hope that out the other side we bring 1 billion people on chain.
Let's do it. Well, I'm here as a teammate. I'll try to help.
Thanks, Sina.
Thanks, man. This has been awesome.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Hey, I'm gonna make a small ask here. If you've been listening to these conversations and want to support what we're doing here, I would really, really appreciate if you could leave a rating and a review for the podcast wherever you're listening to it. This might seem like a small thing, but it will really help other people also discover the show. Thank you. I'm grateful to be able to do this and look forward to being here together again soon.